All right, welcome to the video on how to build a portfolio website. Basically, this is your first time using somebody else's code. I wanted to give you a quick walkthrough of the expectations of how to build a portfolio website in this video. So we're going to be going off of this repo here. This is our build a portfolio website repo. Pretty straightforward. But what might not be straightforward is how to get things set up with Git. So first off, we're going to follow the normal flow that we've been using with branching and creating your own branch and adding your website to it. So you'll notice that this repo only has a README file in it. It doesn't have any folder structure, doesn't have anything else in it. That's just fine. All you've got to do is clone this, well, first fork, right? And then make a branch and then clone it down to your machine. You will then have a folder with a single README file in it. We're going to be doing that first. So just do that first. I expect that you know how to do that at this point. And then, so stop the video if you need to do that at this point. Then navigate to this site. HTML5Up is an amazing portfolio, rich template site. You can use this for many things, not just portfolios, but I feel like if you want to have that first step in the professional world, having a beautiful portfolio web page is key to that success. So we're going to go ahead, and I've given you 4 links that I think are really good portfolio, strong portfolio pieces. I'm going to go ahead and look at Story. That'll be one of the ones that we look at. You can use any of these. There's lots of them. I mean, there is lots of them. But I think in the past, students have been overwhelmed by the choices. And so I've picked out 4 that I think are really solid. However, you can do anything you want. Just want to be clear on that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pick Story. So I've picked that, and I'm going to download it. So here's how it works. You just hit the giant download button. Now, the way that this HTML5Up whole process works and how we can even use this stuff for free is we're providing attribution. That means we're giving credit to the author where credit is due. So in your code, in the license and everything, it says you must give attribution. So all that means is that you've got to say, look, this isn't my stuff. This isn't my design. This is somebody else's design. And that's just fine. We're not here to make this thing a design piece. We're here to code this and give yourself a quick and beautiful portfolio piece. If you don't want to worry about attribution, you can just pay the $19 to own the template yourself on Pixlarity. So I recommend either, but this is all you have to do about here is just say, look, thank you for letting me use this awesome work, and I do appreciate it. Okay, so you'll see in my tray here that I've got the zipped folder. I'm going to go ahead and open up this in Finder. This is the 3rd zipped version as I've been trying things out and testing things out. What I want you to do is get this out of downloads as soon as possible. So I'm going to open up a new Finder window, open up my documents. I'm going to basically go into Git. If I were you, I'd be going into my portfolio page. So here's my portfolio website. Notice it says it's just a blank README file, right? That's exactly what I want to see here. So we can open up our unzipped folder here. Notice that I did it really quickly, but in the Mac, if you double click on a zip, it unzips it. Not all operating systems do that, so be careful. I'm going to take the insides of this folder and just drag and drop them over to my portfolio website. Now notice that the original user has their own README file. That's just fine. We could probably put this inside of a folder actually and just call it portfolio if we wanted to. And then we could pop everything else inside of here just so we don't mess around. We can keep the original README from the assignment intact. Okay, so at this point, now that we've got this folder on our machine, we should be able to double click on this index.html, and lo and behold, we have the template. Pretty cool, right? So compared to the original, notice that we're missing something really interesting. The images. Those images are probably copyrighted. We don't own them, and so we've been provided with some gradient images in place. So what could we do? Well, try to find something that geographically represents you. So if you're from the Midwest, you have a Midwest geographical piece. If you're from the mountainous regions, you could get a mountain. I'm from the mountainous regions. I'm from Utah. So I could go look up on some royalty-free stuff like Unsplash, for example, or Pexels. They're both great. Pexels is actually linked inside the GitHub repo README. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to type in Utah, for example. These should be royalty-free images that I can use. And in this case, that's a beautiful image right there from Preston Pownell. So I'm going to go ahead and download this for free. And it says crediting isn't required, but is appreciated and allows photographers to gain exposure. Copy the text below. So you can do that if you'd like. In this case, I'm just going to showcase the image to you and see how this actually works. So now you can see I've got this JPEG in here. I'm going to open up my Finder, and you can see I've got the Preston Pownell thing. Well, I'm just going to call it Utah image. And I'm going to drag it over to my folder structure. And I'm going to put it in my images folder because that's where it looks like it should go. All the other images are in there. Makes sense to me. So now I've got an image that I could swap in here. Now, this is where the project is awesome. You have to experiment with the code. And guess what? You've got the tools to do it. So first off, you can just open this thing up in VS Code. So I'm going to go grab this portfolio, drag and drop it to my Visual Studio Code here. And now you can see all this stuff in green showing that I haven't versioned anything yet with Git. That's fine. I'm just getting everything set up here. At this point, it would be smart of me to go into my terminal and get everything up and push one big push at this point. My first commit to the repo, just so I can save my work. So do that now if you're watching, like if you've got all this stuff set up. Okay, so if you come back to the index.html, we're going to avoid the demo because that's what was originally given to us. We're going to look at the index.html. That is our file. So first off, we've got to change this to say whatever it is. In this case, it's going to be Josh Nell portfolio. So it's my portfolio, so I'm going to call it that. Notice it's the title tag, so it's going to change the title up here. So let me refresh the page, and you can see it is indeed Josh Nell. It means I'm in the right spot. It's a good first step. All right. The next thing is I just want you to study the code. I want you to look around and say, oh, there's the viewport. Okay, that's awesome. There's the CSS file that we're using. Very cool. So notice where it is. It's inside of assets, CSS. Okay, assets, CSS. And there's multiple things in here. Click on main.css, and I want you to see how crazy this is. Wow. Okay, this portfolio has 8,578 lines of code, white spaces included, but still, that is crazy. You haven't seen anything like this yet in your short career as a developer. That is why I want you to see this. I want you to be exposed to some big, huge CSS problems that you can solve now. So I want you to study this code and get familiar with it and understand, well, when I say familiar, I'm not saying for 8,000 lines. I'm saying just get an idea of what's going on. Like, look at all these crazy things that you've probably not seen before, like appearance, or what is this crazy MS viewport going on? I want you to Google a couple of these things. I don't want you to spend all day doing this, but I want you to identify some things that look really tricky to you and things you haven't seen before, and talk about them with your group in your stand-up meeting at the end of day. So all of this is said inside of our portfolio website. Okay, so make sure you go through this and find things that just look weird to you and identify them and talk about them with your team. That is one of the pieces of what we're going to be doing in the MVP. So if we come back to the GitHub README file, you'll see it. I just wanted you to unzip the code. We've already done that together. I want you to note that we won't be utilizing preprocessors just yet. That's for tomorrow. Well, depends on if you're part-time or full-time. That's coming up in the future. But in this case, you can ignore any folder with less or Sass in it. We're not using pre-processing at this point. It is a stretch goal if you want to try it later, but for now, just ignore it. Work on the MVP requirements listed below. So here's what you're going to do. To actually turn it in, of course, you've got to submit a pull request, add your manager, the whole thing we always do at Lambda School. But let's come down to the MVP requirements. So the thing I just talked about was study the code base and identify both responsive units and where media queries were used. Take notes on anything that confuses you or interesting things you find. So I want you to try to find responsive units. Aha, there's one right there. There's a rem. And I just want you to see how it's used. And then I want you to try to find a media query as you go through your code. And you can see there's a lot of crazy code in here. Aha, there it is. There's a media query. So I want you to identify these things and be able to talk about them with your stand-up meeting in your group. Okay. Also, I want you to customize the template to you. So I want you to update the title tag to match your name. We just did that. Update the placeholder content throughout the template to your information. Now, this is where it can get a little tricky because look how big this portfolio is. I mean, that's a lot of information. I am not expecting you, and by the way, the form does not need to work. It's just a placeholder thing here. I am not expecting you to fill this whole thing out. I'm expecting you to fill out the top portion here and then give me a couple links to your portfolio page, or sorry, to your GitHub repos of projects that you've already built here at Lambda School or projects that you've built elsewhere. So this is going to be a great place for you to post those links. We'll do that together really quickly. But don't think you have to go fill all this stuff out. You can just delete it or display none on all this stuff. You just have to maintain the attribution footer. That's all you've got to do. So don't get freaked out by all of this work. I want you to focus on making this an actual portfolio you can be proud of. So let's make it something we can be proud of. I'm going to come back in here to our index.html. Pro tip, if you want to find out where to go, inspect element, and it'll take you right to the element that you need to, and you can find the matching class name in the H1. And so then you go back to your code, and we can say, okay, it's under content with an H1. Well, guess what? There's content, and there's our H1. Like, that's how you do it. That's how you read somebody else's code. So I'm going to come over here and say Josh Nell. And of course, I'm not going to have a modular, blah, 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 blah. I don't need that anymore. So I've got to find the end of the P tag. So there's the end of the P tag. I'm just going to delete and say, I am a full stack web developer. I love technology and working with people. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to refresh my page here. See what happens. There it is. There's my name. There's my new updated piece. Notice the get started button just nicely takes you down. So I'm going to keep that. That's great. But maybe I wanted to say like view my work or something, or view projects. And so now it makes a little bit more sense what I'm doing, right? I mean, that's all I did. I just updated content. Pretty cool. Okay, so what about this image over here? Well, remember I went out and I got that Utah image from my Unsplash page. So it says images, banner, JPG. Well, let's go to the images folder. You can see down here, I've got my Utah image that I brought in just for me. So I'm going to say Utah-img. Do pay attention if it says JPG or PNG. And of course, an alt tag to describe what's going on. Beautiful image of Utah. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this page, and now you can see what it looks like. That's pretty cool. That's an awesome, attention-grabbing portfolio piece, and it's fully responsive if you didn't touch any of the CSS at this point. So that means if I go down here, it pops into different views, and of course, if you're on a phone, it'll look even different. That's the whole point of this, is to make this thing beautiful and something you can be proud of and post your links to. Okay, so let's set up this thing, and let's look at a website that we've already worked on in the past. So this is Magna, ETM, whatever. So if I wanted to find that, I can go into my page, copy it to my clipboard, do a Control F, Control V to find it, and there it is. Or you can just scroll down and find it. We just have to scroll like a couple inches down. So in this case, what is one of the first projects we worked on here? Well, we could do the Sweet Eats Bakery, right? Sweet Eats Bakery. And then you could talk about what are the first things that you did and just write a little blurb and just say, this project was a study on HTML and CSS. And then you could say, I added, or you did this extra thing. Well, the cool thing is you can go find the URL and pass it right in there. And of course, if we refresh the page, Sweet Eats Bakery, and then instead of learn more, it could be like view code. Something just to get people to understand that you're trying to get them to look at their code. You're looking at your code. You could take a screenshot of a portion of the website that you worked on, or you could get rid of this completely. Or you could come up with a whole nother image from Unsplash that's like a bakery picture. Whatever you come up with, that's your prerogative. But I want you to understand that this is all I'm expecting from you, is to give me a couple links to projects. And then at the end of this, you could just delete all this if you want. The only thing you can't delete is the attribution, so don't lose this. Of course, you don't need to use your social media if you don't want to, but it's kind of cool. This is your web page. All right, last but certainly not least, you are required to host your website. So in this case, we're going to be using GitHub Pages. So I'm going to show you here how you can do it, but make sure you do this on your repo, on your forked repo. So go to Settings, scroll down to where it says GitHub Pages, and this is crazy. This is super cool, my friends, because what we can do is we can actually point to the branch that this is hosted on. We've put our code into. So the branch could be the master branch, or it could be a branch that you made with your name. You click on the branch, and as soon as you do, it'll make this page live. That means that you can actually share this URL with like somebody, put it on social media and say, hey, here's my portfolio webpage. It's awesome, and it's for free. So you can totally do this. We're going to have you do this. Watch the video in the README file that I've linked to you for GitHub pages to understand fully what's going on here. You can actually host your own URL as well. Okay, that is it. Good luck in your project today.